The message arrived on every communication channel across known space at exactly the same moment. It was short, direct, and translated itself into every known language simultaneously. The Galactic Council chambers fell silent as the words appeared on their screens. Humanity, the young species from the Sol system, had sent something that made even the oldest civilizations pause. One more attack. This marks your final obliteration. Ambassador Theron of the Council stood frozen at his podium. Around him, representatives from 100 worlds whispered in confusion and concern. Humanity had always been so eager to please, so desperate to be accepted into the galactic community. They had endured insults, trade restrictions, and what the Council politely called border incidents for decades. They smiled through it all, believing that patience and diplomacy would eventually win them respect. But something had changed. The Vrax's Combine representative, a towering creature with 4 arms and scales that shimmered like oil, laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber like grinding metal. The humans threaten us? They barely control 3 systems. We have fleets that darken the skies of 1,000 worlds. This is the tantrum of children who do not know their place. Theron wanted to argue, but he knew the Vraxes spoke the truth as the galaxy saw it. Humanity was young, their technology decades behind the major powers, their military small and scattered. They had been raided 17 times in the past 5 years alone. Each time they brought evidence to the Council. Each time the Council expressed concern and did nothing. The Vrax's Combine was too powerful, too connected, too important to galactic trade routes to anger over what they called minor misunderstandings. The last incident had been different, though. Titan Station, humanity's largest civilian habitat, had been destroyed. The Vraxes claimed it was an accident during military exercises. 300,000 humans had died. Men, women, children, entire families turned to dust in an instant. The Council had offered condolences and promised an investigation that everyone knew would lead nowhere. That was 2 weeks ago. Now this message had arrived, and Earth had gone dark. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UHSF Defiance, watching through the view screen as another transport ship arrived at the Sol system. The ship was battered, scarred from its desperate journey through hostile space. It carried the last survivors from New Harmony Colony, one of humanity's furthest outposts. The colonists had abandoned everything, leaving behind homes and farms and dreams, all to answer Earth's recall. That makes 347 ships returned. Captain, her communications officer reported, every human vessel outside the Sol system is coming home. Chen nodded slowly. She had commanded the Defiance for 8 years, patrolling the edges of human space, protecting cargo ships and science vessels from pirates and opportunists. She had fought the Vraxes twice, small skirmishes that left good people dead and her ship damaged. Both times the Council had told her to stand down, to not escalate tensions. Both times she had obeyed, swallowing her anger like bitter medicine. Not anymore. What is the status of Project Tombstone? She asked. Her first officer, Commander James Park, pulled up a secure display. Construction is 78% complete. The engineering teams are working around the clock. They say another month, maybe less. We might not have a month, Chen said quietly. The Vraxes are not known for their patience. That message we sent was meant to buy us time, but it might also provoke them into acting faster. Park leaned closer, his voice dropping. Captain, do you really think we will use it? Project Tombstone, I mean. If we activate those devices, millions will die. Maybe billions. Chen looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness that held both wonder and threat. She thought about Titan Station, about the children who had been studying for exams and playing games when the station exploded. She thought about the 73 colonies that had been raided, the ships that had gone missing, the casual cruelty of species that saw humanity as nothing more than insects to be swept aside. I hope we never have to find out, she said finally. But if they push us, if they come at us one more time thinking we are weak, yes, we will use it. In the Kuiper Belt, far beyond the orbit of Neptune, the construction sites hummed with activity. Massive structures floated in the darkness, each one the size of a city. Human workers in powered suits moved between them like ants building an impossible monument. These were not defensive platforms or weapons in any traditional sense. They were something humanity had theorized about for centuries but never dared to build, until now. Dr. Michael Torres floated near one of the primary arrays, checking readings on his tablet. The numbers made him feel sick. The amount of energy these devices would channel was beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. If they worked, they would change warfare forever. If they failed, they might destroy Sol's system just as effectively as any enemy attack. Dr. Torres. A voice crackled in his helmet. Central Command wants an update. Torres looked at the massive structure before him, at the thousands of smaller components that would focus and direct power on a scale that defied imagination. Tell them we are on schedule. Tell them that if the Vraxes come, we will be ready. And if the Council tries to stop us? Torres thought about that question. The Galactic Council had already sent 3 delegations demanding to know what humanity was building. Each time, Earth's government had politely refused to answer. The Council had no authority to inspect human territory without permission, and humanity was no longer granting permission for anything. Then the Council can join the Vraxis in learning what happens when you push peaceful people too far, Torres said. Back on Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, the human government held an emergency session. Every leader from every nation attended, their faces grim on holographic displays. They all knew what was at stake. They all understood that the decision they had made might doom them in the eyes of the galaxy. Prime Minister Williams of the Unified Earth Government stood before the assembly. We have sent our message. Now we wait. If the Vraxis attack again, we follow through. No hesitation, no mercy. Are we all still in agreement? The vote was unanimous. Not because they wanted war, but because they were tired of being victims. Tired of watching their people die while the galaxy looked away. Tired of being told to be patient, to be reasonable, to accept that their lives mattered less than political convenience. Humanity had tried peace. They had tried diplomacy. They had tried patience and understanding and every reasonable path. Now they would try something else. They would try being terrifying. 3 months passed like a held breath. The galaxy watched the Sol system with growing unease. Ships that approached human space were turned away without explanation. Trade goods piled up at border stations, gathering dust as human merchants simply stopped coming. The constant chatter of human broadcasts, their music and entertainment and endless optimistic messages, fell silent. It was as if humanity had pulled a blanket over their entire civilization and disappeared beneath it. Ambassador Theron tried 17 times to contact Earth's government. Each message went unanswered. His assistant, a young diplomat named Kira, brought him reports each morning, and each morning the news was the same. Nothing. No communication. No explanation. Just silence. The observation posts near Sol's system are reporting unusual activity, Kira said, spreading data across Theron's desk. Energy signatures near their sun. Massive construction in the outer planets. Mining operations that have stripped 3 asteroids down to nothing in weeks. Theron studied the information with a growing sense of dread. What are they building? Unknown. The Council's Science Division has 12 different theories, none of them pleasant. Some think it is a defensive network. Others worry it might be something worse. Worse than defenses. Kira met his eyes. Sir, some of the energy readings match theoretical models for stellar manipulation. If humanity has actually figured out how to weaponize stars, she did not need to finish the sentence. Theron understood. Stars were the foundation of life in the galaxy, but they were also the ultimate power source. Unimaginable energy, carefully balanced over billions of years. If someone learned to control that energy, to direct it, they would hold power that dwarfed every conventional weapon ever created. But that was supposed to be impossible. The math worked in theory, but the engineering challenges were beyond even the oldest civilizations. Humanity was barely 200 years into space travel. They could not possibly have solved problems that had stumped species with 10,000 years of scientific advancement. Could they? The Vraxis Combine was not concerned. In their fortress world of Vraxis Prime, the ruling council met to discuss the human problem. General Krathos, commander of their fleet, sneered at reports of human construction projects. Let them build, he said, his forearms gesturing dismissively. They are welcome to waste their resources on defensive stations. It will not matter when we strike. The Galactic Council is pressuring us to negotiate, one of the civilian leaders noted carefully. They fear humanity might have developed something dangerous. Krathos slammed one massive fist on the table. The Council fears their own shadows. Humanity is nothing. They have been nothing since we first encountered them. This threat they broadcast, this message of obliteration, it is the desperate bluff of a dying species that knows it cannot win. Then why wait? Another general asked. Why not strike now and end this farce? Krathos smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Because I want them to finish their defenses. I want them to believe they are safe. Then when we break through whatever they have built, their despair will be absolute. We will not just defeat humanity. We will break their spirit so completely that no species will ever dare threaten us again. The Council approved his plan with enthusiasm. Orders went out across the Combine's territory. Every available warship was to gather at Rally Point Sigma. The fleet would be the largest ever assembled, a show of force so overwhelming that resistance would be meaningless. 12,000 warships carrying enough firepower to crack planets, all heading towards Sol system. It would be glorious. Captain Chen walked through the corridors of her ship, observing the crew as they worked. The Defiance had been upgraded over the past months, fitted with new weapons and shields that Earth's engineers had developed in their desperate rush to prepare. But Chen knew the truth. Even with upgrades, even with every advantage they could manufacture, humanity's fleet was badly outnumbered. Captain, Commander Park approached her with a data pad. New orders from Earth Command. We are to take position in the inner defense grid, Sector 7, right between Mars and Earth. Chen took the pad and read through the orders. Sector 7 was a killing ground. Any enemy that reached that position would have broken through the outer defenses. Ships assigned there had one job: buy time for evacuation ships to escape. It was a suicide posting dressed up in military language. Acknowledged, she said calmly. Begin preparations to move to Sector 7. Park hesitated. Captain, there is something else. Unofficial channels are reporting that the Vraxis are assembling a massive fleet. Intelligence estimates over 10,000 ships. Let them come, Chen said. The words came out harder than she intended, but she did not take them back. We sent them a message. They chose to ignore it. In the civilian sectors of Earth's orbital stations, people went about their lives with forced normalcy. Parents took children to school. Workers reported to factories. But everyone knew. They watched the news feeds showing military buildups. They read the carefully worded government statements that promised Earth would be defended. They understood that their comfortable lives hung by a thread. Maria Santos stood in her apartment looking down at Earth through the massive viewport. She taught mathematics at the station's university. A peaceful life spent helping young minds understand the elegant logic of numbers. She had never expected to live through a war. Her daughter, Sophia, came up beside her. The girl was only 12, but her eyes held an understanding beyond her years. Mom, are we going to be okay? Maria wanted to lie. She wanted to promise that everything would be fine, that the adults would fix this problem like they fixed all problems. But Sophia deserved truth. I do not know, sweetheart, Maria said softly. But whatever happens, we are together. And humanity is not going to just accept being destroyed. We are going to fight. Like Titan Station fought. The words hit Maria like a physical blow. Sophia had lost her best friend when Titan Station was destroyed. The girl had cried for days, unable to understand why someone would kill so many people for no reason. Yes, Maria said, pulling her daughter close. But this time we are ready. This time, we make sure they understand what it costs to hurt us. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, Dr. Torres made the final adjustments to the primary array. The construction was complete. Project Tombstone was operational. He ran diagnostic after diagnostic, checking every connection, every power relay, every safety system. The device worked. More than worked. It exceeded every projection. They could actually do it. They could reach out and touch a star, bend it to their will, turn it into a weapon of unimaginable destruction. Torres thought about his ethics classes in university, about debates on the responsibility of scientists. He remembered arguing passionately that knowledge itself was neutral, that only the application of knowledge carried moral weight. Young, naive Dr. Torres had believed that good intentions were enough. Older Dr. Torres, standing before a weapon that could kill billions, understood that some knowledge came with blood on it from the moment of discovery. All stations report ready. A technician called out. Project Tombstone is operational and awaiting activation codes. Torres transmitted his confirmation to Earth Command. The weapon was ready. Now they would see if humanity had the courage to use it, or if they would blink first when the moment came. Across the galaxy, the pieces moved into position. The Vraxis fleet gathered, confident and eager. The Galactic Council debated and argued, achieving nothing. Humanity waited in silence, their defensive networks active, their terrible weapon hidden and ready. The storm was coming. Everyone could feel it. The only question was who would still be standing when it passed. The Vraxis fleet emerged from slipspace at the edge of the Sol system, like a swarm of metal locusts. 12,000 warships, their hulls gleaming with the pride of a civilization that had never known defeat. General Krathos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable, and smiled at the sight of humanity's home system spread before him. "Scan for defensive positions," he ordered. "Show me what the humans have built with their months of desperate preparation." The tactical display lit up with contacts. Thousands of them. Defense platforms orbited every major planet and moon. Minefields created deadly corridors through the outer system. Human ships, looking pitifully small compared to Vraxis warships, held formation at strategic choke points. It was impressive for such a young species. "It would not be enough. Open a channel," Krathos commanded. "Let the humans hear my voice before they die." The communication array broadcast across all frequencies. "Humans of Earth, you sent us a message 3 months ago. You threatened obliteration if we attacked again. We are here to show you what happens to species that threaten the Vraxis Combine. Surrender now and we will be merciful. Resist, and we will turn your worlds to dust." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a single response came from Earth, calm and cold. "You were warned." The battle began with the outer defense platforms opening fire. Missiles and energy beams lanced across the void, striking at the Vraxis vanguard. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes. Alarms blared across the fleet as the humans demonstrated that their weapons had improved significantly in 3 months. But the Vraxis had numbers. For every ship destroyed, 10 more pushed forward. The human defenses were good, but they were not enough to stop an armada this size. Captain Chen watched from the Defiance as the outer platforms fell one by one. The crew worked with grim efficiency, every person knowing their job, every person understanding that they might not survive the next hour. The Vraxis were pushing through the outer system faster than projected. "All ships hold position," she commanded the inner defense fleet. "Do not engage until they cross the Mars orbit line. Make every shot count." The human fleet waited as the Vraxis advanced. Enemy ships swatted aside the remaining outer defenses like annoying insects. Hundreds of human fighters launched suicide runs, buying seconds with their lives. The void filled with debris and bodies and the wreckage of dreams. The Vraxis crossed Mars orbit. "All ships engage," Chen shouted, and the inner defense fleet opened fire with everything they had. The Defiance shuddered as it unleashed its weapons. Around her, dozens of human ships did the same, pouring fire into the advancing enemy. The Vraxis fleet staggered under the concentrated assault. Ships died by the dozens, their shields overwhelmed by the ferocity of humanity's desperation. But still they came. "Captain, we are being targeted by their capital ships," Commander Park reported. "Shields at 60% and dropping." Chen gripped her command chair. "Maintain fire. We hold this line until ordered otherwise." On Earth, in the command bunker, military leaders watched the battle unfold on massive displays. Every death, every destroyed ship, every sacrifice was recorded and witnessed. Prime Minister Williams stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her face carved from stone. "They are pushing through the inner defense grid," Admiral Harrison reported. "At current pace, they will reach Earth orbit in 2 hours. "Casualties?" Williams asked quietly. 40% of the fleet destroyed or disabled. Estimated enemy losses at 8%. They had given everything, and they had barely scratched the Vraxis fleet. Williams thought about the billions of people on Earth below, waiting to see if their military could save them. She thought about the children in schools, the families in their homes, all the ordinary people who just wanted to live their lives in peace. The Vraxis had made this choice. Not humanity. The Vraxis had pushed and pushed until there was no other option left. "Activate Project Tombstone," Williams said. "Authorization code Alpha Omega Final." The order went out on secure channels. In the Kuiper Belt, Dr. Torres received the activation codes and felt his hands shake. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's future or end it entirely. "Beginning activation sequence," he announced to his team. "May God forgive us for what we are about to do." The devices powered up, their systems humming with barely contained energy. The math was elegant in its simplicity. The execution was anything but. Humanity had built machines that could reach across millions of kilometers and touch the surface of their sun. They could manipulate magnetic fields, direct stellar flares, channel the primal fury of nuclear fusion itself. The Vraxis fleet detected the energy spike, too late. From the sun, massive flares erupted. But these were not natural phenomena. They were directed, controlled, focused beams of stellar plasma, each carrying the energy of 10,000 nuclear weapons. The beams lanced through space at near light speed, crossing the distance to the inner system in minutes. The Vraxis fleet had no time to react. The first beam struck a cluster of capital ships near Mars. The ships did not explode. They simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly by temperatures that matched the surface of the sun. Their shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, were meaningless against this onslaught. The second beam cut through a battle group of cruisers. Hundreds of ships died in a heartbeat. The third beam, the fourth, the fifth. The stellar lances swept through the Vraxis formation like a scythe through wheat, and wherever they touched, ships died. Thousands of warriors with dreams and families and lives turned to plasma and light. General Krathos watched in horror as his fleet disintegrated. Evasive maneuvers? All ships scatter! But there was nowhere to run. The beams adjusted faster than ships could move, tracking targets with impossible precision. The humans had turned their sun into a weapon, and they wielded it with devastating efficiency. Retreat! Krathos screamed into the communications array. All ships retreat to slip space jump distance! The surviving Vraxis ships turned and fled, abandoning attack formations, abandoning wounded ships, abandoning any pretense of military discipline. They ran for their lives as humanity's solar weapon continued to fire, cutting down ships even as they desperately tried to reach safe distance. Of the 12,000 ships that entered Sol system, fewer than 4,000 escaped. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance watching the enemy fleet break and run. Around her, the crew was silent. They had won. They had actually won. But the victory felt hollow as they watched the stellar beams continue to fire, killing Vraxis by the thousands. Captain, Park said softly, should we pursue? Chen looked at her tactical display, at the fleeing enemy ships, at the burning wreckage that filled the space between Earth and Mars. 8,000 ships destroyed in less than an hour. Hundreds of thousands dead, maybe millions. No, she said finally. We sent them a message. Let the survivors deliver it. The stellar weapon continued to fire for another 20 minutes until every enemy ship had either been destroyed or escaped to slip space. Then slowly the beams faded. The sun returned to its normal state, burning peacefully as if it had not just been used to commit mass slaughter. In the command bunker on Earth, Williams sagged into her chair. Around her, military officers were celebrating, cheering at the impossible victory. But she felt only emptiness. How many? She asked Admiral Harrison. Estimated 8,000 enemy ships destroyed. Nearly complete casualties on those vessels. We are talking about millions of dead, Prime Minister. Williams closed her eyes. Millions. The number was too large to comprehend, too massive to hold in her mind. Each one had been a living being with thoughts and fears and people who loved them. But they had come to Earth to kill billions. They had destroyed Titan Station. They had raided colonies. They had pushed and pushed until humanity had no choice but to push back. Prepare the second message, Williams said. The galaxy needs to know what happens when you ignore humanity's warnings. The message was already written. It had been written 3 months ago, waiting for this moment. Now it would be broadcast to every world, every civilization, every being that could receive a signal. The Vraxis survivors would tell their story. But humanity would make sure the galaxy heard the truth. They had been warned. They had chosen obliteration. Now they would live with the consequences. The Vraxis homeworld received the news of their fleet's destruction with disbelief that quickly turned to rage. In the planetary capital, emergency councils were called. Military commanders shouted at each other, while civilian leaders demanded answers. How had a species they considered barely civilized destroyed the greatest fleet the Combine had ever assembled? General Krathos, one of the few high-ranking officers to escape the battle, stood before the ruling council. His pride was broken, his confidence shattered. They have weaponized their star, he said, his voice hollow. The energy readings were beyond anything we have encountered. Our shields, our armor, our entire defensive doctrine is useless against stellar plasma traveling at those speeds. Then we fortify, Counselor Vex declared. We strengthen our home system defenses. Let the humans stay in their corner of space. We have lost a fleet, but we still control hundreds of worlds. We are still powerful. Kratos wanted to agree. He wanted to believe that the nightmare was over. But he had seen the calculation in humanity's response, the cold precision with which they had wielded their terrible weapon. A species that could build such a device in 3 months would not stop there. They sent another message, a communications officer reported quietly. It was broadcast 10 minutes ago on all frequencies. The message played on the council chamber's main display. It was not long, but every word carried weight. The Vraxis Combine was warned. They chose to attack anyway. 8,000 ships entered our space with the intent to destroy our civilization. Those ships and their crews no longer exist. This is not a threat. This is a statement of fact. We can reach any star in known space. We can make any sun into a weapon, and we will do so if attacked again. To the Vraxis Combine specifically, you have 24 hours to begin evacuating your home worlds. After that time, we will demonstrate that our capabilities are not limited to our own star. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Some demanded immediate counterattack. Others called for evacuation. A few, like Counselor Vex, insisted it was a bluff. They cannot possibly reach our star from across so many light years, Vex argued. The energy requirements alone would be impossible. This is psychological warfare, nothing more. Kratos remembered the stellar beams cutting through his fleet like they were made of paper. You did not see what I saw. The humans have changed the nature of warfare itself. If they say they can reach our star, we should believe them. The debate raged for hours. Meanwhile, human ships emerged from slipspace at the edge of Vraxis territory. Not warships. Cargo vessels, transports, even civilian haulers that had been retrofitted. They moved with purpose toward the inner system, toward Vraxis Prime and its 6 colony worlds. The Combine's defensive fleets, still reeling from the loss of their primary armada, scrambled to intercept. They threw everything they had at the approaching human vessels. Missiles filled the void. Energy weapons carved through space. The humans did not even try to fight back conventionally. They simply kept coming, their ships absorbing damage, some exploding in brilliant fireballs. But enough got through. Dr. Torres watched the operation from Earth through remote feeds. Each ship carried a miniaturized version of the stellar manipulation technology, designed to be deployed and operated remotely. The engineering team had achieved in weeks what should have taken years, driven by desperation and the knowledge that failure meant the Vraxis would eventually rebuild and return. First deployment successful, a technician reported. Devices online and beginning activation sequence. On his display, Torres saw the data stream from the device now orbiting near the Vraxis sun. It was working. The magnetic fields were responding. The stellar matter was being directed, controlled, manipulated. How long until the effect is irreversible? Torres asked, though he already knew the answer. 7 hours, 43 minutes. After that point, the star's fusion reactions will cascade beyond any ability to stop them. Estimated time to supernova event, 72 hours from initial activation. 72 hours. 3 days for the Vraxis to evacuate billions of people from 7 worlds. It was not enough time. Not nearly enough. Torres had run the calculations. Even with every available ship, they might save 20% of the population if they were incredibly lucky and organized. The rest would die when their sun exploded. Torres felt sick. He was not a soldier. He was a scientist who had wanted to study the stars, to understand their beauty and complexity. Now he had turned that knowledge into the most horrific weapon in galactic history. "Sir," the technician said quietly, "should we proceed with the secondary deployments?" Torres looked at his display, at the readings from the Vraxis sun at the point of no return rapidly approaching. Humanity had made its choice. Now the Vraxis would pay the price for their arrogance. "Proceed," Torres said. "Activate all devices simultaneously." On Vraxis Prime, alarms blared across every city. The astronomical monitoring stations had detected the impossible. Their sun was changing. The fusion reactions in its core were accelerating, becoming unstable in ways that defied natural physics. Someone, somehow, was killing their star. The panic was immediate and absolute. Billions of people looked up at their sun, the source of all life and warmth on their world, and realized it had become their executioner. The evacuation began, but it was chaos. Ships meant for cargo were loaded with people. Families were separated as children were prioritized for the limited space. Riots broke out at spaceports as people fought for survival. The colony worlds were no better, each facing the same impossible choice of who would live and who would die. Counselor Vex stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, watching as orderly civilization collapsed into desperate survival. Below him, millions surged toward the spaceports, knowing that most would never reach them. He had called humanity's threat a bluff. He had been catastrophically wrong. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Ambassador Theron stood before them, his face gray with horror. The humans have actually done it. They are forcing a sun to go supernova. If they succeed, 7 worlds will be destroyed along with billions of Vraxis civilians. Then we must stop them, the Deltari representative declared. Send our fleets to Earth. Threaten them with complete destruction if they do not halt this madness. And if they refuse? Theron asked. They have already demonstrated they can destroy any fleet we send. More importantly, they have shown they are willing to commit genocide to make their point. Do you truly believe threats will work on a species that has already crossed this line? The chamber fell silent. The representatives from 100 worlds looked at each other, realizing that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in a single day. Humanity, the young species they had condescended to and ignored, now held the power to destroy any civilization that angered them. We must try to negotiate, Theron said. I will contact Earth's government. Perhaps there is still time to pull back from this horror. He sent his message carefully worded, pleading for mercy while offering no real concessions or promises. The response from Prime Minister Williams came within an hour. Ambassador Theron, humanity has no desire to see billions die. We are not monsters, regardless of what our actions might suggest. But we sent a clear warning 3 months ago. We told the Vraxis exactly what would happen if they attacked. They chose to ignore that warning and sent 12,000 ships to destroy our civilization. We have responded as promised. This is not murder. This is following through on a commitment. If the Galactic Council wishes to prevent future tragedies like this, perhaps you should start enforcing your own laws and protecting younger species from predators. We gave you decades to do the right thing. You failed, so we are doing it ourselves. Theron read the message 3 times, searching for any opening, any hint of compromise. He found none. Humanity had made its decision and they were not backing down. On Vraxis Prime, the evacuation continued around the clock. Ships departed as fast as they could be loaded, carrying terrified refugees to neighboring systems that were overwhelmed by the sudden influx. Aid organizations from across the galaxy mobilized, but they were too few and too late. General Krathos stood in the command center, coordinating the evacuation efforts. He had been a warrior his entire life, trained to face any enemy with courage. But how did one fight a dying sun? How did one wage war against physics itself? Status report, he demanded. We have evacuated 400 million from Vraxis Prime, an officer reported. Another 200 million from the colony worlds. Current estimates suggest we will save less than 15% of the total population before the star becomes critical. 15%. Krathos did his own calculations. That meant over 6 billion would die. 6 billion Vraxis, most of them civilians, most of them innocent of any crime except being born in the wrong place at the wrong time. He thought about his speeches before the invasion. His confidence that humanity was weak, his certainty that the threat was empty. He had led his people to this catastrophe through pride and stupidity. Keep loading the ships, he said quietly. Save everyone we can, and may the ancestors forgive us for what we brought upon ourselves. In the Sol system, Captain Chen walked through the corridors of the Defiance. The ship was damaged but intact, being repaired after the battle. Crew members passed her in silence, their faces showing confusion, relief at being alive and growing horror as they learned what humanity had done in retaliation. Captain, Commander Park approached her. There is a message from Fleet Command. They want all ship captains to prepare statements for the crew. People are struggling with what we have done. Chen nodded slowly. She had known this would come. You could not commit an act of this magnitude without it affecting everyone involved. The question was whether humanity could live with itself afterward. Tell the crew the truth, she said. We did not want this. We tried every peaceful option. But when faced with extinction, we chose survival. Let history judge whether we were right. Above them, the sun burned peacefully, its terrible power once again dormant. But everyone who looked at it now would remember what humanity had turned it into. They would remember that humanity had learned to kill stars. And they would know that the message sent 3 months ago had not been a bluff. The Vraxis sun exploded exactly 72 hours and 17 minutes after the devices activated. The supernova was visible across 100 light-years, a brilliant flash that temporarily outshone every other star in that region of space. 7 worlds died in an instant, along with the 4 billion beings who had not made it onto evacuation ships. 4 billion lives ended because of decisions made by leaders who thought themselves untouchable. The shockwave of the event, both physical and political, rippled through the galaxy. Every civilization received the astronomical data. Every species saw the proof that humanity had done the impossible. They had killed a star, and in doing so had killed worlds. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as representatives absorbed the magnitude of what had occurred. Ambassador Theron stood at his podium, his hands trembling as he prepared to read Earth's final message. "This will be humanity's last statement on this matter," he began, his voice barely steady. "We broadcast it so that every civilization in the galaxy understands what has happened and why." The message played on the main display. Prime Minister Williams appeared, her face weary but her voice firm. "We did not want this. We must make that clear from the start. Humanity spent decades trying to join the galactic community peacefully. We offered trade, friendship, cultural exchange, and cooperation. We followed your laws even when they disadvantaged us. We sought arbitration through proper channels when wronged. We believed in the promise of a civilized galaxy where disputes were resolved through diplomacy rather than violence. That belief was betrayed. Repeatedly. For years, the Vraxis Combine raided our colonies, killed our people, and treated us as lesser beings unworthy of protection. Each time we brought evidence to the Council. Each time we were told to be patient, to be reasonable, to understand that the Vraxis were an important power that could not be antagonized. Our lives apparently mattered less than political convenience. Then they destroyed Titan Station. 300,000 civilians, including 70,000 children, died in an instant. The Vraxis called it an accident. The Council offered condolences but no justice. At that moment we understood the truth. We were alone. If humanity was to survive, we would have to ensure our own survival. We sent a clear message. One more attack would result in obliteration. We meant every word. The Vraxis chose to test that promise. They assembled the largest fleet in their history and attacked our home system with the explicit intention of destroying our civilization. They failed. 8,000 of their ships were destroyed by the defensive capabilities we developed during our 3 months of preparation. We could have stopped there. We had defended our territory. We had proven we were not helpless. But we had also made a promise, and humanity keeps its promises. Williams paused, and for a moment her composure cracked. When she continued, there was pain in her voice. 7 Vraxis worlds have been destroyed. 4 billion beings have died. Let us be clear about what this means. Those were not all soldiers. They were not all decision-makers who chose to attack us. They were farmers and teachers and children and ordinary people who just wanted to live their lives. Their deaths will haunt us forever. But they died because their leaders ignored our warning. They died because the Vraxis Combine believed humanity was too weak to follow through on its threats. They died because the Galactic Council failed to enforce its own laws and allowed aggressive species to prey on younger civilizations without consequence. We are not proud of what we have done, but we are not ashamed either. When faced with extinction, a species has 2 choices: submit or resist. We chose resistance, and we will continue to choose resistance if threatened again. Here is what the galaxy must understand. Humanity can reach any star. We can turn any sun into a weapon. We have the capability, and if pushed, we will have the will to use this power again. But we will never strike first. We will extend every courtesy, every opportunity for peace, every chance for diplomatic resolution. We will be the best neighbors you have ever known. Unless you attack us, unless you target our civilians, unless you treat our lives as less valuable than your political ambitions, then we will end you. Not just your military, not just your government. We will remove the foundation of your civilization, and leave your species scattered among the stars with nothing but memories of worlds that once were. This is not a threat. It is a promise. And as the Vraxas have learned, humanity keeps its promises. We did not ask to become what we are now. We were pushed and pushed until we broke. What emerged from that breaking is something new. We are still human. We still value life and peace and cooperation. But we are also now the species that killed 7 worlds. We are the civilization that will burn down the galaxy before we allow ourselves to be exterminated. Choose wisely how you treat us. The message ended. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment, then erupted into chaos. Some representatives demanded immediate military action against Earth. Others argued for diplomatic isolation. A few, mostly from smaller species who had also suffered at the hands of stronger powers, quietly noted that perhaps the galaxy had needed this wake-up call. Ambassador Theron listened to the arguments with a heavy heart. He understood both sides. Humanity had committed an atrocity, yes, but they had done so after being pushed beyond any reasonable limit, after the very body meant to protect them had failed them repeatedly. Perhaps the real monsters were not the humans, but the system that had forced them to become monsters. On Earth, the reaction was complex and painful. There were celebrations in some quarters, relief that humanity had survived and proven its strength. But there was also mourning. Memorials were held for the Vraxas civilians, for the children who had died because of decisions they had no part in making. Maria Santos attended one such memorial with her daughter Sophia. They stood among thousands of humans, listening to speakers talk about the weight of survival, about the cost of safety, about the burden humanity now carried. "Do you think we are bad people now, Mom?" Sophia asked quietly. Maria thought about the question carefully. "I think we are people who did a terrible thing for what we believed was a good reason. History will decide if we were right, but we have to live with what we have done. We have to carry this weight and make sure we never forget it." "Why? Why not just forget and be happy we are alive?" "Because," Maria said, "the moment we forget, the moment we think this was easy or justified without question, we become the monsters we were trying to stop. We have to remember the cost. We have to let it hurt. That is how we stay human even after doing inhuman things." Captain Chen received new orders a week after the Vraxas' son died. The Defiance was to be part of a diplomatic mission, visiting neighboring civilizations to explain humanity's position and establish new treaties. It was strange going from warrior to diplomat, but she understood the necessity. The first stop was a minor trade hub controlled by the Deltari Collective. When Chen and her delegation entered the negotiation chamber, she saw something she had never experienced before in galactic diplomacy. The Deltari representatives stood when humans entered. They offered proper respect protocols. They negotiated as equals. Fear, Chen realized, could accomplish what years of patient diplomacy could not. She was not sure how she felt about that. Dr. Torres remained on Earth working on new projects. The government had assigned him to develop peaceful applications of stellar manipulation technology. If they could weaponize stars, perhaps they could also use them to generate unlimited clean energy, or terraform hostile worlds, or seed new solar systems with life. He threw himself into the work, trying to balance the scales of what he had created. But late at night, when he closed his eyes, he saw the Vraxas sun exploding. He saw 7 worlds burning. He saw 4 billion lives ending in fire. He would see it for the rest of his life. The Vraxas survivors were scattered across 30 systems, refugees dependent on the charity of other species. The Combine was broken, its military destroyed, its home gone, its pride shattered. Some called for revenge. Most simply tried to survive and build new lives from the ashes of the old. General Krathos lived in a refugee camp on a minor world, working as a laborer. He was still alive because he had been on an evacuation ship when the sun exploded. Sometimes he wished he had stayed behind. He received a message one day from an unexpected source. A human organization dedicated to helping Vraxas refugees. They offered him no apology, no excuses for what had been done. But they did offer aid, resources to help rebuild, and a simple statement. "We are sorry for your loss. We are sorry this was necessary. We hope that someday your people and ours can find a way forward together." Krathos stared at the message for a long time. The humans had destroyed his worlds but now wanted to help rebuild his people. It made no sense. It made perfect sense. They were showing the galaxy that they could be both terrifying and compassionate, that they would kill with one hand while offering aid with the other. Perhaps that was the point. Perhaps humanity was teaching the galaxy a lesson that species had forgotten over millennia of comfortable civilization. Power without compassion was tyranny, but compassion without power was weakness. True strength came from having both and knowing when to use each. Years passed. The galaxy adjusted to its new reality. Aggressive species reconsidered their expansionist policies. The concept of acceptable losses when dealing with younger civilizations vanished overnight. The Galactic Council reformed its charter, strengthening protections for member species and establishing actual consequences for violations. Humanity remained vigilant. Project Tombstone sat dormant in the Kuiper Belt, its systems maintained and ready but unused. It was a promise and a threat, a reminder that hung over every diplomatic negotiation like a sword. Earth opened itself to the galaxy again, establishing trade routes and cultural exchanges. Human scientists shared their knowledge, carefully avoiding anything related to stellar manipulation. Human artists created works that explored the moral complexity of their species' survival. Human philosophers debated endlessly whether they had been justified or whether they had lost their souls. There was no simple answer. Captain Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there were species that feared humanity, that hated them, that saw them as monsters. Somewhere out there were also species that respected them, that understood why they had done what they did, that recognized humanity as a power that could be reasoned with but never dismissed. She thought about Titan Station sometimes, about the 300,000 who died there, about whether their deaths had been avenged or if humanity had simply become the same kind of monster that had killed them. "Admiral," a young officer approached, "we have received an invitation from the Galactic Council. They want to discuss humanity's role in enforcing the new protection protocols." Chen smiled slightly. "Enforcing them? They want the monsters to be their guards? Perhaps they want the species that understands the cost of violence to ensure violence becomes a last resort." "Perhaps," Chen agreed. "Send our acceptance. And prepare a delegation. We will show them that humanity has not forgotten how to be diplomatic. We will show them that we are still capable of choosing peace. But if they push us again," Chen looked at the stars, at the vast beauty and danger of the galaxy. "Then they will learn, as the Vraxis learned, that humanity's final message was not idle words. We will obliterate them completely, permanently, without hesitation. Because we promised, and humanity keeps its promises." The galaxy had entered a new age, an age where power was respected, where consequences were real, where younger species could no longer be preyed upon without facing terrible retribution. It was not the peaceful utopia humanity had once hoped for, but it was better than the alternative. It was survival. It was justice. It was the galaxy that humanity's sacrifice had created. And high above Earth the sun burned peacefully, its terrible power dormant but ready, waiting, watching. A reminder to the galaxy that humanity had touched the stars and learned to make them burn for human purposes. The monsters from Sol III had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.